I stood there, drink in hand, at a party when my wife casually announced to the whole room, "We're opening our marriage." Silence. She was waiting for me to lose it, to scream, to make a fool of myself, to prove I was jealous. Instead, I raised my glass and toasted. To your brave little kindergarten ideas. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We've decided to open up our marriage, Emily announced, casual as if she were suggesting we switch from wine to cocktails. The chatter around us stuttered like a needle skipping across a record. Her voice was clear, calculated. Daniel and I both agreed that monogamy isn't working anymore. We're just being honest with ourselves. Laughter from another group died mid-breath. I looked around. Friends, colleagues, a couple of Emily's clients, all shifting awkwardly. They weren't ready for this kind of show. I didn't flinch. Instead, I turned, raised my glass, and with the kind of smile you only learn from years of corporate strategy meetings, I toasted Emily's bold kindergarten ideas. A few people let out nervous laughs. Unsure, like they couldn't tell if I was serious or about to explode. Emily blinked. That wasn't the reaction she'd rehearsed for. No yelling. No public meltdown. Just me. Level cool, slicing her attempt at dominance right back at her in front of everyone. She recovered fast. "It's not a joke," she said, sharper now. "It's about growth." "Of course it is," I said, voice like velvet. "Just like juice boxes and nap time." Even the bartender smirked. She tried to hold it together, tucked her hair behind her ear, reached for her glass, but I saw the stiffness in her hand. She expected me to fall apart. She didn't know what to do when I didn't. Someone muttered something about the shrimp being excellent and wandered off. Another couple followed. The circle broke as people found places to hide from the fallout. I stepped closer, dropping my voice low. "Was this your big moment? Did you rehearse that line? You're making a scene." "No," I replied. "You made a scene. I'm just giving it better lighting." Her nostrils flared. "You always think you're smarter." "No," I said, taking a sip, just quieter. "And tonight, that's enough." We stood there in silence. Not talking, not moving. Just two people whose truths were finally out in the open, but only one of us seemed shaken by it. And that's when I caught it. That flicker of doubt behind her confidence. She'd thrown the grenade. But I didn't run. I didn't scream. I smiled. The crowd had thinned. The laughter had faded. Emily was left standing in the echo of her own announcement. As I wandered toward the terrace, I could feel her eyes on my back. Watching. Calculating. Probably wondering when she lost control. But I'd felt it earlier. The shift. Because this wasn't the collapse. This was only the beginning of her control unraveling. The next evening, the tavern lights spilled onto the cracked sidewalk like warm honey. AL's, a brick-and-wood dive tucked between a laundromat and a florist, had always been our spot. Not flashy, not fancy, but real. You could order a good whiskey and be left alone unless you wanted company. Chris was already there when I walked in, leaned back in a booth by the far wall, nursing a pint, half watching the Bulls game. He'd texted me earlier. "You alive, or do I need to show up with whiskey and a shovel?" I slid into the booth across from him. Shovel might have been more useful last night. Chris gave me that slow headshake he always does before dropping a truth bomb. She really said it in front of everyone? Right after talking about her new Pilates instructor? I flagged the bartender. "Neat whiskey. Whatever's not water." "Dude," Chris said, leaning forward, voice low. "What the hell is going on in your marriage?" I rested my elbows on the table and looked him dead in the eye. She wanted to make a statement. Shock value. Humiliate me, maybe. So I made mine. He blinked. "Wait, you're actually doing this open relationship crap?" I let out a breath, not quite a laugh. "No. I just said something sarcastic to take the air out of her sails." She didn't expect me to stay calm. Chris narrowed his eyes. "You sure about that? 'Cause it looked like you were going along with it." "That was the point," I said, picking up my glass as the bartender set it down. She made it public so she could control the narrative. If I'd stormed off or shouted, she'd be the victim. I handed her the mic and walked away. He stared at me for a beat. "That's actually brilliant." "Cold, but brilliant." "I didn't sign anything," I said. "Didn't agree to anything." I let her twist in the silence she created. Chris leaned back, visibly relaxing. "Good. 'Cause honestly, if you told me you were about to start swiping through dating apps, I might have called your mother." "Tempting," I said dryly, "but unnecessary." He sipped his beer, tapped his finger against the glass. So what now? You just let her play this game out. She wants to play liberated woman reinventing herself while still living in a condo I pay for, I said. Fine, let her. But she doesn't get to dictate my part in the play. Chris whistled low. Damn, you really flipped the whole script on her. She expected outrage. I gave her indifference. I paused. Let that sink in. You know what scares people like Emily more than being challenged? Chris shook his head. Being ignored, I said. She needs reaction to feel powerful. Without it, she's just making noise into an empty room. Chris nodded slowly, his face turning serious. You ever think about walking away? Like, for real? Every day since she decided to make our marriage performance art, I replied. But not before I let the mask fall off completely. He studied me for a second, then raised his glass to quiet revolutions. I clinked mine against his and well-placed exits. The game on TV faded into background static. In that booth, with the wood grain worn smooth by time, I felt more grounded than I had in weeks, maybe months. I wasn't unscathed, but I wasn't off balance either. And that unsettled Emily more than any fight ever could. Emily always made our kitchen feel like it belonged in a magazine. Marble counters, sleek white cabinets. That overhead lighting she insisted was mood-conscious. She was perched on a stool near the island, barefoot, wine glass in one hand, some Spotify jazz station filling the room with soft saxophone hums. I walked in, loosened my tie, kicked off my shoes. She barely looked up. There's something liberating, she said, about shedding old constructs. Like not being owned by labels. Don't you think? Her tone was light, careful, the kind of voice she used when she was trying to sound enlightened. But underneath, I could already hear it. The test. I didn't answer right away. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching her swirl the wine like it had answers floating in it. Are we talking about wine? I said. Or are you still on your post-monogamy manifesto? She smiled wide, too casual. Just thoughts. I've been reading about it. How open relationships build trust. How autonomy actually makes love stronger. I took a slow sip. Fascinating. And here I thought trust came from honesty. Her smile didn't falter, but I caught the twitch near her eye. She set the glass down, folding her legs underneath her on the stool. You're not mad anymore, are you? No. I said it like a shrug. I wasn't mad. Just curious how long you rehearsed that party declaration. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. Maybe. I grabbed a tangerine from the bowl and started peeling it over the sink. Or maybe I just know the difference between a real conversation and a publicity stunt. Emily's voice softened, almost sultry. We don't have to make it a war, Daniel. We're evolving. Isn't that what people our age are supposed to do? Challenge what marriage looks like. You're free to challenge whatever you want, I said, tossing a peel into the trash. You've made that clear. I just think, she continued, sipping again, we've outgrown jealousy. Possession. This need to own each other. I nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. She blinked. It does. I looked her straight in the eye. Absolutely. In fact, I was thinking I might head out tomorrow. Visit some friends. See what the world has to offer. Her glass paused midair. There it was. That tiny crack. She tried to recover quick. Oh, what friends? Just people I haven't seen in a while, I said, walking to the fridge. Voice casual. Old friends from school. Maybe grab a drink. It's been too long. She lowered the glass. Anyone I know? Probably not, I said, pulling out a bottle of sparkling water. It's been years. The silence after that stretched long and uncomfortable, like a draft slipping through a sealed window. You're actually going out? She asked, forcing a light tone. I popped the cap off the bottle. You said freedom builds love. I'm just trying to be a better man. Her jaw tightened. Just a flicker, barely noticeable, but I saw it. Daniel, she said slowly. This isn't some competition. Of course not. I took a sip. That would imply I'm trying to win something. She fell silent again. The playlist shifted to some moody Miles Davis solo that made the room feel 10 degrees colder. I grabbed a glass and poured the water, every movement deliberate, patient. You've been different lately, she said after a while. How so? Detached. Distant. I gave a small smile. Or maybe just disinterested in theatrical monologues about liberation while the wine does the talking. She stood abruptly, placing her glass in the sink a little harder than necessary. I was trying to have an adult conversation. And I'm responding like one, I said. No yelling. No accusations. Just acknowledgement. Emily walked past me without another word. Her perfume brushed my shoulder as she disappeared down the hall. I didn't follow. I stood there in that glossy kitchen, every drawer soft close, every light dimmable, and listened to the quiet she left behind. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like my house again. I wasn't planning to stay long. The rooftop party was one of those creative networking mixers Emily used to drag me to. All linen blazers and exaggerated laughter. I hadn't seen her since that morning when she'd left for a yoga and wine day retreat with two women I barely recognized anymore. She hadn't asked where I was going. I hadn't offered it. Now here I was, standing beside a metal bucket of melted ice and sweating craft beer cans, pretending to be interested in vegan bruschetta. The skyline glittered behind me. Late spring in Chicago, warm on the skin, but the wind still had a chill. I liked the contradiction. Shoot. I'm so sorry. Cold liquid soaked through my sleeve before I even registered the splash. I looked down. An amber cocktail was now decorating my cuff and dripping toward my watch. A small hand rushed in with napkins, blotting and dabbing with frantic energy. I didn't see you there. I was trying to escape a conversation about cryptocurrency. She laughed a little too brightly, then winced. You're definitely not laughing. I finally looked up. She was maybe late 20s. Curly dark hair tied up in a scarf. Oversized hoop earrings swaying as she moved. Her expression was mortified, but honest. I gave her a small smile. Well, at least it wasn't red wine. That was my second choice, she said, eyes twinkling. You must be new here. You've got the look. What look is that? The how soon can I leave without looking rude look. I laughed before I meant to. It felt easy. Strange. Real Daniel, I said, offering a damp handshake. She took it without hesitation. Zoe, cocktail assassin. Nice to meet you, I think. Zoe stepped back and tilted her head. You don't really want to be here, do you? Honestly, I was promised shrimp. You believe the flyer? Rookie mistake. She grinned, then leaned against the railing beside me. You here with someone? I hesitated. No, just floating. Me too. Just got back to Chicago. Actually moved home to take care of my mom after her surgery. Everything okay? She's tough, stubborn as ever. And I'm a terrible nurse, but we're figuring it out. I nodded. I imagine you had a life before this. I was in New York, she said, stretching her arms. Modern dance. Broken toes. Cheap ramen. Endless auditions. And you miss it every day. Her eyes searched the skyline. But I don't regret coming back. There was a quiet between us. Not uncomfortable. Just still. She glanced at me sideways. You strike me as someone who used to laugh more. That obvious? Zoe smirked. Only because I've been there. We stood like that, shoulder to shoulder, letting the noise of the party hum behind us while the wind brushed past our collars. She didn't ask more. She didn't press. And somehow that silence felt more intimate than anything Emily and I had shared in weeks. Eventually, Zoe tucked a curl behind her ear and stepped back. Well, Daniel, she said, if you ever need another drink spilled on you, I'm around. She turned and disappeared into the crowd, her laugh trailing behind her like a ribbon. I looked down at my sleeve, still damp. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to rush home. The lights were low when I stepped inside. The smell of her expensive vanilla candles drifted faintly from the living room. Emily was curled up on the couch, legs tucked under a throw, laptop open in her lap. A little too perfectly posed for someone supposedly just relaxing. She didn't look up right away. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, frozen mid-scroll. It was the pause that gave her away. You're back, she said, casual as a weather update. Yeah, I replied, setting my keys in the tray near the door. Didn't want to miss my bedtime story. She closed the laptop with deliberate slowness. I figured you'd be out later than that. Rooftop parties are energetic. I looked at her. That's one word for it. Her eyes narrowed slightly, gauging my mood. So, was it wild? Voice light, but stiff with something unspoken. I shrugged off my jacket and walked toward the kitchen. Not really, but it was good. You sound refreshed, she said, following me with her eyes. Anyone I'd know? Doubt it. I grabbed a glass from the cupboard, filled it slowly from the tap. A lot of new faces. New as in young, she asked, tilting her head. There it was. I sipped unfazed. New as in unfamiliar. Emily shifted on the couch, her tone sweetening artificially. I remember those parties. Everyone trying to be interesting. I suppose some were. They were. I walked past her on my way down the hall. Did you meet anyone interesting? I stopped, turned just enough to meet her gaze. Actually, yeah. Had a great conversation. Her smile faltered just a hair. Oh, bright girl. Funny. Spilled her drink on me. Started a whole conversation from there. I gave a small smile. Good energy. Emily's expression didn't move, but her body gave her away. Her fingers tensed around the edge of the throw blanket. Well, she said lightly. That sounds fun. It was. I nodded. Refreshing, even. I turned again, this time not stopping. As I walked down the hallway, her voice floated after me. I hope you were respectful. I paused at the bedroom door. I was exactly as respectful as the new rules allow. Silence. Not the quiet kind. The heavy, bitter kind. The kind that fills a house when someone realizes they're no longer holding the reins. I turned off the hall light and stepped into the bedroom. Behind me, I could still feel her trying to read between every word I'd said, digging for subtext, struggling to find her footing in a game she thought she was winning. But the truth was, I hadn't lied. I had a good night. And the worst part for her? She couldn't stop me. By the time Friday rolled around, Emily was playing the unbothered wife card with expert precision. She floated through the apartment, humming along to playlists, leaving half-empty wine glasses around like decorative pieces, pretending nothing at all was slipping from her grip. So when she announced we'd be attending Liza and Greg's housewarming together, her tone didn't leave much room for negotiation. Just a casual evening, she said, dropping the invite on the counter like it was some kind of peace treaty. A few old friends. Lots of charcuterie. No drama. I glanced at the invite. You sure about the no drama part? She met my eyes for a split second too long. I think we could use a night of normal. And maybe she meant that. Or maybe she just didn't want to show up alone and face the music she'd started playing. The house was a classic brownstone in Logan Square, newly renovated, all open concept and soft lighting. Laughter spilled out through the front door before we even knocked. Inside, the place was already buzzing with warm bodies, expensive gin, and indie folk music looping from someone's curated playlist. Emily naturally slid into social mode like she was stepping onto a stage. Air kisses, compliments, tiny dramatic gasps. I stayed back, making a slow lap toward the drinks table, nodding to a few familiar faces, and then Zoe. She was near the back of the room, dressed in something bright and patterned that looked like it had been borrowed from a dancer's daydream. Her eyes caught mine across the room. A quick smile. No pretense. I didn't move toward her, didn't need to, but I noticed Emily noticed her. The evening moved like molasses and wine. People laughed too loud at safe jokes. A guy named Brandon kept bringing up his crypto portfolio. At some point, Liza pulled out an ancient Polaroid camera and started documenting everyone like we were some art project. Then it happened. We were all gathered around the kitchen island, wine in hand, cheese boards decimated, when someone asked about couples sharing workspaces at home. Emily laughed. Oh, Daniel and I don't share much of anything anymore. The group chuckled politely. Then she raised her glass slightly and added, I don't even let him into my bed anymore. The air shifted. A few people laughed, uncertain. One woman coughed into her drink. Someone tried to pivot the conversation, but they weren't fast enough. From across the kitchen, Zoe's voice rang out. Easy. Unhurried. Bright as crystal. Well, there's always room in mine, honey. The room froze. Emily turned sharply, blinking like she hadn't heard right. Zoe stepped forward, her smile sharp. Or was that one of those jokes that only sound funny in your own head? Emily stammered. I was obviously kidding. Were you? Zoe tilted her head. 'Cause it didn't sound like it. It sounded like a woman trying real hard to prove she still has control over something she clearly doesn't. Emily flushed crimson. This has nothing to do with you. Zoe's laugh was soft. Sweetheart, you brought me into it the second you made your husband a punchline. The murmur started, half whispers and darting glances. Emily looked around, suddenly realizing everyone was still watching. You're embarrassing yourself, she hissed. No, Zoe said, eyes narrowing. I'm reminding you that you don't get to humiliate someone and expect silence in return. Emily's voice cracked. This is my friend's party. Then maybe you should act like it, Zoe snapped. For a moment, no one moved. No one dared interrupt. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I picked up my glass, gave a small nod to Zoe, and walked to the back deck, not looking back. Behind me, the room buzzed again. But for once, Emily was the one standing alone in the middle of the noise. I was folding towels on the bed when Emily stormed in, fueled by fire and whatever pride she had left. The door didn't slam, but it might as well have. The air cracked with tension. There she was. Zoe. She started flinging her bag onto the chair, practically undressing you with her eyes in front of 20 people. And you what? Smiled like it was cute. I calmly flipped a towel, smoothing the edge with my palm. I smiled because she was honest. You should try it sometime. Emily froze mid-stride. Excuse me. You heard me. She threw her hands in the air. No, you don't get to stand there folding laundry like you're above all this. You think acting calm makes you right. I didn't look up. No, but it keeps me from embarrassing myself in someone else's kitchen. Emily took a sharp step forward, her voice slicing through the room. So now I'm an embarrassment. I'm saying you're spiraling. That's different. Oh my God, Daniel, do you even hear yourself? You sound like a therapist who gave up on their own marriage. I set the folded towel down carefully. You're the one who rewrote the rules. I'm just living in the house you built. I didn't rewrite anything. I brought up a possibility, an adult conversation, and you turned it into this Cold War. I met her eyes finally. You didn't bring up a conversation. You made a declaration in front of our friends. That's not openness. That's theater. She blinked. I was being brave. You were being provocative, I said simply. And now that you're not getting the reaction you wanted, it's falling apart. Her mouth tightened. So that's what this is about. Control. I think you wanted it. Not all of it. Just enough to feel ahead. She crossed her arms, chin lifted. I just wanted us to be honest with each other. To evolve. No, I said, folding a shirt now. You wanted permission without consequences. She scoffed. And you? You're just Mr. Morality. Folding laundry like it's the final word on marriage. I looked down at the shirt. No, I just like symmetry. Something in this house should feel balanced. Emily's jaw clenched. You used to fight for us. Now you just stand there smug like nothing touches you. I fought for something that was real, not this version where you toss out ideas like they're fashion trends. Oh, come on. You wanted freedom? I interrupted, voice still calm. And I'm giving it to you. I'm not stopping you. I'm not chasing you. I'm not locking any doors. She stared at me, breath catching. And what about you? Are you enjoying this freedom? I paused, reached for a pair of socks. I don't feel restricted, if that's what you're asking. Her voice cracked, barely holding together. So you've been with her, haven't you? I raised an eyebrow. You said it was allowed. That's not an answer. That's all you're getting. Emily took 2 slow steps forward, hands trembling now, fury swallowed by fear. Daniel, don't do this. Do what? Follow your lead. Isn't this what you wanted? I didn't think it would feel like this, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't think you'd stop needing me. I set the socks down. I didn't stop needing. I stopped proving. The silence afterward was deafening, not peaceful, but raw and unfinished. Emily stood there in our bedroom, surrounded by neatly folded cotton and silence that refused to soften. Her shoulders heaved once, then twice. But I didn't move. I just stood there, hands resting on the edge of the laundry basket. The home still looked the same. Books on the shelves, candles in every corner, sunlight leaking through linen curtains. But the energy had shifted. She was untethered. And I was finally, irrevocably still. The sun hit the porch just right that morning, warm enough for short sleeves, cool enough for the second coffee pot to feel necessary. Birds chirped. Leaves rustled. It should have been peaceful. But nothing in our house had been peaceful for weeks. Emily sat across from me at the small iron patio table, legs crossed, sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through emails on her phone. Her mimosa was barely touched. I sipped my coffee and cleared my throat. So, I talked to Lyle and Monica. No response. They invited us out to that kayaking weekend again. The couples thing. Still nothing. Her finger dragged across the screen like I hadn't spoken. I leaned back, kept my tone casual. I told them I'd go. Now her eyes flicked up. You? Yeah. She arched a brow. Since when do you paddle anything except a spreadsheet? I smiled. I thought I'd try something new. Shake the routine. Isn't that what you've been encouraging? Her jaw worked for a moment. Are you planning to go solo? Actually, I said, setting my mug down, Zoe's joining me. The phone went still in her hand. I let the name hang in the air like smoke. I didn't rush to fill it. Emily sat back in her chair, crossed her arms, and laughed once, short and sharp. Of course she is. You said it's healthy to have new experiences. I replied smoothly. Oh, I did, she asked, pushing her sunglasses up into her hair. Did I also say bring your dance club arm candy to a couple's retreat? I shrugged. You didn't say not to. Her voice dropped, laced with venom. This is childish. You're the one who said we should embrace change, Emily. I'm just kayaking my truth. She leaned forward, voice now tight and clipped. Do Lyle and Monica know your partner is someone you barely know? Do they know yours is imaginary? I shot back without flinching. That landed. Her mouth opened, then closed. I waited. She grabbed her glass, stared into it. I have a partner. Oh. I raised an eyebrow. What's her name? Emily's gaze hardened. He. And I won't be paddling anywhere anyway. Shame, I said. The water's supposed to be really calm this time of year. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the porch tiles. This whole thing is a performance to you, isn't it? No. I replied, still seated. It's just finally your play, and you don't like the audience reaction. I don't need an audience. I gave her a dry smile, then stopped speaking in monologues. She stared at me, chest rising and falling, hands clenched at her sides. I watched the fury hit her like a second wind. But now it came with something else. Doubt. Because she'd been so certain she would control the narrative, that I would beg or break or storm out. Instead, I was calm and paired up. She turned without a word and walked back inside, the screen door slapping shut behind her. I picked up my coffee again. Birds chirped. The sun warmed my shoulder. The water hadn't even touched us yet. And still, she was already drowning. The water was glass that morning. Sunlight spilled across the river like a silk sheet. The soft ripple of our paddles, the only sound for miles. Zoe sat ahead of me, steady and fluid, her strokes clean, like she'd done this before. Can't remember the last time I heard this much silence, I said, letting the paddle glide alongside the boat for a beat. She looked back over her shoulder with a grin. You say that like it's a bad thing. No, I said. It's the kind of silence that feels earned. She dipped her paddle again. That's the kind that makes noise back home feel worse, huh? I smirked. Louder than ever these days. The kayak drifted gently along the bend. Trees leaned over the banks like old eavesdroppers. There was a peace out here that felt unfamiliar, not just from the setting, but from the company. No eggshells. No hidden landmines. Just two people floating forward. Emily always did love chaos, Zoe said suddenly, not even looking back. I paused. You knew her back then? High school, she said, tone light but precise. We weren't close. Not really. But even at 16, she made every hallway feel like a stage. I didn't answer right away. I just watched the wake behind her paddle ripple outward. She could get a room to orbit her, Zoe continued. That kind of power is addictive when you figure out how to use it early. Sounds about right, I muttered. But she never really liked being challenged, Zoe added, turning slightly to glance at me. Even by herself. I raised an eyebrow. That from personal experience? She smirked. She hated that I didn't care what people thought. She always assumed it meant I was trying to steal her spotlight. I wasn't. I just didn't want to live under it. I let out a breath through my nose. And now here you are again, unknowingly caught in another performance. Zoe leaned her paddle across the kayak for a moment, letting us drift. You think I didn't know what I was stepping into? She asked, her voice gentler now. I looked at her. You didn't strike me as the oblivious type. I'm not. But I also don't get dragged into other people's drama unless I let them pull me. And yet the other night. That wasn't drama, she said. That was defending someone who didn't ask for it, but needed it anyway. I stayed quiet, letting that settle. I saw how she looked at you, Zoe continued. Like she still owned the patent on your reaction. And you were too calm for her to understand. I turned my gaze to the horizon, to the golden stretch of sky ahead. Maybe calm is the only way I know how to stay human lately. She nodded. Well, human looks good on you. I didn't say anything. Just let the current pull us gently forward. Zoe shifted again, letting her legs stretch as far as they could in the slim space. You ever wonder why people cling to chaos? Why it becomes their identity? Because it keeps them from sitting with themselves? I said. Stillness is where the truth shows up. She smiled faintly. Exactly. A blue heron swept overhead, wings wide, effortless. I watched it go, watched how even it made leaving look graceful. Zoe picked up the paddle again. You know, you don't have to stay in something just because you've already spent years inside it. I used to believe that. I said that time meant truth. That length meant loyalty. And now, I dipped my paddle slowly. Now I believe clarity comes when you stop speaking someone else's language. We moved in silence for a while after that. Not the tense kind, but the kind that lets two people breathe the same air without explanation. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't navigating someone else's emotional currents. I was finally just floating in my own. The house was quiet when I returned. Not the kind that comes with rest or peace or a good day behind you, but the kind that feels off. Like something was waiting behind the door to unravel. I stepped inside, set my keys down with a soft clink, and noticed Emily's shoes in the entryway. Her purse was on the floor beside them, carelessly dropped. That wasn't like her. The bedroom door was cracked open, barely. I pushed it with 2 fingers. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking, her face buried in her hands. The kind of crying that didn't care anymore about being heard or seen. It wasn't performative. It was broken. She didn't look up. I didn't know how to undo it, she whispered. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood in the doorway, one hand still on the frame. I thought I could handle it, she said, lifting her head. The idea of freedom, of being bigger than all of it. And now I can't breathe. I stepped inside slowly. She looked at me like she was searching for something in my face. Maybe mercy, maybe denial. I wanted to stop, she said. The open thing. The everything. She wiped her face with her sleeve, tried to steady her voice. Can we just go back to how it was? I sat on the bench at the foot of the bed. Not close. Not far. Emily, I said quietly. I'm filing next week. The words hit like a shelf collapsing. Her mouth opened, but the sound came out empty. What? She finally breathed. I didn't raise my voice. I meant what I said. You're free. You don't have to carry anything for me anymore. She shook her head fast. No, I haven't been with anyone. I swear to God, Daniel, I never actually, I couldn't. That's not the point, I said. She looked like she didn't understand, or refused to. I never touched anyone, she repeated, like that somehow rewound the clock. I was bluffing, trying to feel like I still mattered. I nodded. And now I am doing the same, by leaving. She stood up, took a step toward me. So that's it. After all of this, I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm freeing myself from the war you declared. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I know. Her face crumbled again, her voice coming out like gravel. You're really done? I stood, looked her in the eyes. Emily, I said, I stopped being your husband the night you turned our life into a statement. She covered her mouth, staggered back, and sat on the bed like her legs had given out. I didn't wait for another reply. I turned, walked to the hallway, and pulled the door closed behind me. Gently. Finally. No slamming. No shouting. Just an ending. The air smelled like roasted beans and rain-soaked pavement. Zoe and I sat by the window at Olive Street Cafe, our usual spot now. 2 months into autumn, the leaves outside had already begun their slow surrender, coloring the sidewalks in copper and gold. I stirred a packet of raw sugar into my coffee, glancing over as she flipped through a local art flyer. Her hair was tied back today, loose strands catching the morning light. Did you see the mural they're unveiling down by the lakefront? She asked, not looking up. Some artist from Portland. All abstract chaos. I smiled. Sounds familiar. She arched a brow. Let me guess, you're about to say something poetic about life imitating art. Wasn't planning to, but now I might. We shared a soft laugh, the kind that didn't need permission or performance. The quiet between us was easy. No edge, no bated breath. Just coffee, conversation, and the low hum of a world still spinning outside. I took another sip, then casually asked, You hear anything from Emily? Zoe glanced up, lips twitching with that knowing smirk of hers. Oh, you didn't hear? I raised an eyebrow. Her second marriage lasted all of 5 weeks, she said, tucking the flyer into her bag. Guy moved in, got overwhelmed, and apparently ran off to Arizona to recenter. She made air quotes with her fingers. Said he needed silence to heal from emotional overload. I let out a slow, quiet chuckle. Freedom suits her, I guess. Zoe tilted her head. You okay with all that? I nodded. It's just information now. She studied me for a second, then leaned back in her chair. I think she underestimated you. You're not the man she thought she married. No, I agreed. I'm the man she left room to become. Outside, a yellow cab splashed past the curb. The barista behind us called out 2 lattes. Zoe reached for her cup, brushing her fingers lightly against mine. We didn't speak for a moment. We didn't need to. For the first time in a long, long stretch of stormy days and silence-filled rooms, I wasn't walking on glass. I wasn't folding towels for peace or dodging conversations laced with traps. I was sitting across from someone who saw me, not what I was failing to be. Zoe looked at me, half smiling. Still kayaking your truth? I smirked, floating better than ever. And as we sat there watching the city move in quiet harmony outside the glass, I realized something I hadn't said aloud yet. Some endings aren't collapses. They're clearings. Just enough space to build something real. And that was the end of the story. You know, I've been thinking. Zoe stood up for me that night at the housewarming party. She didn't have to. She could have just walked away like everyone else. But instead, she spoke up. Did she do the right thing? Or was it crossing a line that wasn't hers to cross? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know what you think. And if this story pulled you in, hit like and subscribe for more just like.